r/no sleep. Posted by you/towerwatcher1993 6 hours ago. I accepted a job as a fire lookout in a remote national forest. I've been here 2 weeks, and I'm terrified to go down the stairs. You know that feeling when life backs you into a corner so tight you can't breathe? That was me 3 months ago. My fiancé left me, my debt was spiraling, and the city noise felt like it was physically scraping the inside of my skull. I didn't just want a new job, I wanted to vanish. So when I saw the listing for a fire lookout in the Cascades, seasonal, remote, strictly solo, I applied immediately. I didn't care about the pay. I cared that the nearest human being would be 20 miles away. The interview was weirdly short. The ranger, a guy named Holloway who looked like he hadn't slept in a decade, didn't ask about my qualifications. He just asked if I was sound of mind and if I was comfortable with extreme isolation. I told him I craved it. He stamped my paper, handed me a set of keys, and said, "Tower 14, it's the furthest out. Don't let the radio silence get to you." That was it. The first week was exactly what I needed. Tower 14 is a 40-foot steel structure jutting out of a sea of pine and fir. The cab at the top is a 14 by 14 room with windows on all sides. It's like living in a glass box in the sky. My routine was simple. Wake up, brew coffee on the propane stove, scan the horizon for smoke, radio in the all clear to Holloway at 08 and 18, read, sleep. It was peaceful. The silence was heavy, but it felt like a blanket. Then came day 8. I woke up around 3 a.m. I'm a heavy sleeper, but something woke me. The wind usually howls up here, rattling the glass panes, but that night it was dead silent. The kind of silence that feels pressurized, like the air before a thunderstorm. I sat up in my cot and looked out the south-facing window. The moon was bright enough to illuminate the tree line below. There was something standing at the edge of the clearing. From 40 feet up, perspective can be tricky, but this didn't look like a bear or a cougar. It looked like a man. He was just standing there, facing the tower. He wasn't moving, he wasn't looking around. He was just a dark, vertical smudge against the gray-blue of the forest. I grabbed my binoculars. My hands were shaking a little, not from fear, I told myself, but from the cold. I brought them to my eyes and focused. It wasn't a man. It was a deer, a buck, but it was standing on its hind legs. Its posture was perfectly straight, its front hooves hanging limp at its sides like human arms. Its head was snapped back at an unnatural angle, staring directly up at my window. I dropped the binoculars. When I looked back with my naked eyes, the clearing was empty. I convinced myself it was a dream. Isolation psychosis, right? It happens. I spent the next day drinking too much coffee and aggressively reading a paperback thriller, trying to drown out the memory of that deer. Day 9 is when the radio started acting up. I radioed in my 1800 check-in. Tower 14 to base, all clear, over. Usually, Holloway responds within 10 seconds. Base to Tower 14, copy that, have a good night. This time, static hissed for a solid minute. Then a voice cut through. It wasn't Holloway. It sounded wet. That's the only way I can describe it, like someone trying to speak with a mouthful of water. Tower 14, are you lonely? I froze, my thumb hovering over the talk button. Base? Holloway, is that you? You're breaking up. Static. Then, the door. Is it locked? Jack? My blood turned to ice. I hadn't told anyone my name was Jack. On the official forms, I'm John. Only my ex and my family call me Jack. I didn't answer. I turned the radio volume down to a whisper and checked the trapdoor in the floor. It was bolted. I dragged my heavy trunk over it anyway. Things escalated on day 10. I went out onto the catwalk. the metal grate balcony that wraps around the cab to empty my gray water bucket. It was mid-afternoon, bright and sunny. I looked down the stairs. The stairs are steep, open-air metal grates. About halfway down, maybe 20 feet off the ground, there was something tied to the railing. I squinted. It looked like a bundle of rags. Against my better judgment, I walked down. The wind whipped at my jacket. As I got closer, the smell hit me first. Copper and rot. It wasn't rags. It was a collection of dead birds. Jays, crows, sparrows. They were tied together by their own intestines, looped around the metal railing in a complex, decorative knot. They weren't just dead. They were mashed, like they'd been squeezed by a giant hand. I retched, pulling a knife from my pocket to cut them loose. I didn't want that hanging there. As I sawed through the grisly rope, I heard a sound from the brush below. Click, click, click. It sounded like someone snapping their tongue against the roof of their mouth, but loud, amplified. I looked down. Standing at the base of the tower, directly beneath me, was Holloway. "Jesus, Holloway!" I shouted, the relief nearly buckling my knees. "You scared the hell out of me. Did you see this sick shit on the stairs?" Holloway didn't look up. He was wearing his ranger uniform, but it looked 2 sizes too big. His hat was pulled low. "Holloway!" He slowly tilted his head back. It wasn't Holloway. It was his face. I recognized the beard, the nose, but it was worn like a mask. The skin was loose, sagging around the jawline. And the eyes? There were no eyes, just smooth, pale skin where the sockets should be. The thing opened its mouth, and that wet, gurgling voice from the radio drifted up. "Jack, come down." I scrambled back up the stairs so fast I bruised my shins on the metal steps. I bolted the trapdoor, dragged the trunk back over it, and pushed the table on top of that. I grabbed the radio mic, screaming for help. "Mayday! Mayday! This is Tower 14. I have an intruder. I need police. I need help." The radio didn't crackle with static. It just hummed. Then, perfectly clear, my own voice came back to me. "Mayday! Mayday! I have an intruder." Then, the sound of laughter. Not human laughter. It sounded like a hyena trying to mimic a baby.
That was 2 days ago. I haven't slept. I have a shotgun, standard issue for bears, but I only have 6 shells. Yesterday, day 12, the mimicry started getting worse. It's not just the radio anymore. I hear my mother calling my name from the woods. I hear my ex-fiancé crying, begging me to let her in. It sounds exactly like them. It knows things it shouldn't know. It screamed about the time I broke my arm when I was 7. It whispered the last words I said to my dad before he died. But the worst part isn't the noise, it's the silence. This morning, I looked out at the forest. The trees have moved. I know how that sounds, but I have a map. I have landmarks I use to scan for smoke. The large, distinctive oak that was 200 yards to the east, it is now 50 yards from the base of the tower. The tree line is closing in. The forest is literally tightening around the tower like a noose. I found the logbook from the previous lookout an hour ago. I was tearing the place apart looking for more ammo when I found it wedged behind the propane tank. The last entry is dated 3 weeks before I arrived. October 4th. They don't like the light. If you turn off the lantern, they can't find the door. But if you turn off the lantern, the dark gets in. I think I'm going to jump. It's better than let them unmake me. Unmake me. That phrase has been looping in my head. I'm posting this now because the generator is sputtering. I have maybe an hour of power left for the satellite uplink. Once the power dies, the lights go out. I can hear them on the stairs now. Not one, dozens. It sounds like wet slaps against the metal. Slap, drag, slap, drag. They aren't knocking anymore. They are testing the metal of the cab floor. I can feel the vibrations in my feet. They are scratching at the underside of the trap door. I looked out the window 5 minutes ago. The sun is setting, but the forest isn't getting dark. There is a pale green luminescence rising from the ground, and in that light I saw them. There are hundreds of them, things that look like deer, things that look like men, things that look like Holloway. They are all standing in a perfect circle around the tower, staring up. And they are all smiling. Wait. I just heard the radio click on by itself. It's Holloway's voice again, but it's clear this time, urgent. Tower 14, this is Holloway. Listen to me carefully. We found your car at the trailhead. It's been smashed. We're coming up with a team, but we're 4 hours out. Jack, whatever you do, do not look at the sky. Do you copy? The suppression field is failing. Don't look at the sky. I don't know if it's really him. I don't know if it's another trick. But the scratching under the floor has stopped. The banging on the stairs has stopped. It's dead quiet. And something is tapping on the glass of the skylight. I'm going to look up. I have to know. If I don't update this, don't take the job at Blackwood Ridge. Don't go into the woods. And if you hear your own voice calling for help from the dark, don't answer. Update coming if I survive the night.
r/no sleep. Posted by you/subwayrat88. 6 hours ago. Long. I'm a structural engineer for the city. We found a station that isn't on any map, and I wish we hadn't. I want to preface this by saying I'm not a writer. I'm a guy who looks at concrete, taps it with a hammer, and tells the city if it's going to fall on someone's head. I deal in stress loads, rebar corrosion, and water tables. I don't deal in ghosts, and I sure as hell don't deal with whatever the fuck we found down in the C-sector tunnels 3 days ago. I'm posting this here because my NDA is ironclad, and if I take this to the press, I lose my pension and probably my freedom. But if I post it on a forum for scary stories, I've got plausible deniability. If my boss asks, it's creative writing. But it's not. God, I wish it was. It started on Tuesday. My department received a ticket regarding a vibrational anomaly on the Green Line. Commuters were complaining of a hum near the North Bend, and the sensors were picking up seismic activity that didn't match the geological profile of the area. My supervisor, a guy we'll call Miller, assigned me and a junior surveyor, Davis, to check it out. The plan was simple. Access the maintenance tunnels during the graveyard shift, 0200 to 0430 hours. Walk the perimeter of the active track and inspect the foundation of the old overflow tunnels that run adjacent to the main line. The city is built on layers. You have the modern subway, below that the 1950s infrastructure, and below that, well, a lot of bricked-up mistakes from the turn of the century. We entered through a service hatch in a janitor's closet at the 42nd Street station. The immediate transition is always jarring. You go from the sterile, fluorescent buzz of the station to the wet, heavy silence of the underworld. The air down there is different. It's thick. It tastes like brake dust, ozone, and ancient stagnant water. "Flashlights on, helmets tight," I told Davis. He was a good kid, fresh out of college, eager to find a Rat King or some vintage graffiti. "You hear that?" Davis asked, barely 5 minutes in. "Hear what?" "The quiet." He was right. Usually the tunnels breathe. You hear the distant rumble of night trains, the dripping of condensation, the scurrying of rats. But this specific corridor, Sector C4, was dead silent. It felt like the air was being held in someone's lungs, waiting to exhale. We walked for about 20 minutes until we reached the seismic anomaly coordinates. According to the blueprints on my tablet, we were supposed to be standing next to a reinforced concrete retaining wall. We weren't. Instead, we were standing in front of an archway, a massive Victorian-era brick archway that had been sealed up with cinder blocks, except the cinder blocks had crumbled inward, not exploded out, crumbled in, like something on the other side had pulled them through. "This isn't on the map," I muttered, scrolling through the CAD files. "This wall is supposed to be solid earth for another 40 feet. Davis shone his light into the hole. The beam died about 20 feet in. "Draft coming from inside, Mike. Smells sweet?" It did. It didn't smell like sewage or rot. It smelled like almond extract and copper. "We have to document it," I said, pulling out my camera. "Structural integrity of the main line might be compromised if there's a void back there." We climbed through the breach. The tunnel on the other side was older, much older. The walls weren't concrete, they were tiled. Beautiful, intricate mosaic tiles in patterns I didn't recognize. Spirals, fractals, not the utilitarian white tiles of the modern subway. These were obsidian black and deep crimson. "Look at the tracks," Davis whispered. I looked down. The rails were rusted, which was normal. But the ties, the wooden planks that hold the rails, they weren't wood. They were spongy. When I stepped on one, it gave way slightly, like hard rubber or cartilage. "Rot," I rationalized. "Water damage makes wood soft." "Mike," Davis's voice trembled. "Look at the station." We had walked maybe 100 yards when the tunnel opened up into a platform. It was a ghost station. Cities have them, stations built and abandoned or closed due to budget cuts. But this one was wrong. There were no ads, no benches, no ticket booths, just a long, curved platform that seemed to stretch on forever into the dark. And the architecture, nothing had right angles. The ceiling arched in a way that made me dizzy to look at, like the geometry was fighting with my inner ear. There was a sign hanging from the ceiling, swinging ever so slightly in that sweet-smelling draft. Station 9. There is no Station 9. The line skips from 8 to 10. "Check the radio," Davis said. I unclipped my radio. "Control, this is Unit 4. We've found an unmapped breach in Sector C. Please advise." Static, but not white noise. It was a rhythmic static. Thump, hiss, thump, hiss, like a heartbeat. "Interference," I said, though my stomach was doing backflips. "Let's check the structural supports and get the hell out of here." We jumped down onto the platform. The tiles here were slippery. I shone my light on the floor and realized it was coated in a thin, translucent slime. "Mike!" Davis called out from further down the platform. "You need to see this!" He was standing in front of a turnstile, or what looked like one. It was made of bone. I'm not being poetic. It was femur bones and rib cages fused together with iron brackets, polished until they gleamed. "What the hell is this place?" Davis choked out. "Some kind of art project? A cult thing?" "Don't touch it," I snapped. "We're leaving, now." "Wait!" Davis stopped. He tilted his head. "The train!" "There are no trains running tonight, Davis, especially not here." "No, listen! It's coming!" I strained my ears. I heard it. A low vibration in the soles of my boots, a distant screech of metal on metal. But it didn't sound like a train. It sounded like screaming. Thousands of people screaming in unison, pitched down to a mechanical roar. "Run!" I said. "It's coming fast," Davis said. But he wasn't moving. He was staring down the tunnel, mesmerized. The wind picked up. That almond smell intensified until it was choking us. The darkness at the end of the tunnel shifted. 2 lights appeared. Not white headlights. They were red, dull, bioluminescent red. "Davis, move!" I grabbed his harness and yanked him back toward the breach. "It's beautiful," he whispered. The train burst out of the tunnel. It wasn't a machine. I need you to understand this. I am an engineer. I know how things are built. This thing was grown. It was the size of a subway train, segmented like a worm. The outer shell looked like rusted iron, but it pulsed. Veins the size of fire hoses throbbed along its sides. The wheels weren't steel. They were many-legged clusters of claws that skittered along the tracks, sparking against the rust. And the windows were eyes, huge, milky, cataract-filled eyes that rolled wildly as the thing screeched into the station. It didn't slow down with brakes. It digged its claws into the platform, tearing up chunks of concrete and tile. It came to a halt right in front of us. The heat radiating off it smelled of cooked meat. The doors hissed open, not sliding doors, sphincters. They dilated with a wet, tearing sound. "Boarding," a voice boomed. It wasn't a speaker. It came from everywhere, vibrating the fillings in my teeth. It sounded like my own voice, but distorted. "Boarding for the digestion." "Mike!" Davis was crying now. "My legs won't move." I looked down. The slime on the floor. It had hardened around our boots, turning into amber-like resin. I kicked frantically, snapping the laces on my left boot to pull my foot free. "Cut them!" I screamed, fumbling for my utility knife. I slashed at the resin around Davis's ankles. It was tough, like cutting through a tire. From inside the train, things started to emerge. They looked like commuters at first glance, men in suits, women in dresses. But their proportions were wrong. Arms too long, faceless, and they were attached to the floor of the train by thick, fleshy umbilical cords. They didn't walk. They floated, drifted toward the open doors, their arms reaching out. "Tickets," the voice boomed. "Davis, give me your hand," I screamed, sawing at the goo. One of the commuters latched on to Davis's jacket. Its hand wasn't a hand. It was a suction cup with teeth. Davis shrieked, a sound I never want to hear again. The thing pulled. Davis slid backwards.
"Mike! Mike!" I lunged for him, grabbing his arm. I pulled with everything I had. My boots slipped on the slime. The train, big organism, it groaned. The floor of the platform started to tilt. The whole station was shifting, contracting. The station wasn't a building. We were already inside it. The train was just the tongue. "Let me go!" Davis yelled. He looked at me, eyes wide with a clarity that was worse than the fear. "It wants to. If you hold on, it takes us both." "No!" "Tell my mom I fell," he said. And then he let go of my arm. The momentum sent me flying backward. I hit the tiled wall hard, cracking a rib. I looked up just in time to see Davis being dragged into the orifice of the train. The sphincter door pulsed shut. The train let out a whistle that sounded like Davis screaming, and then it accelerated. It didn't go forward, it went down. The tracks angled sharply into the floor, plunging into a vertical shaft that shouldn't have been there. I scrambled back toward the breach. The walls were breathing now. The beautiful tiles were softening, turning into scales. The ceiling dripped hot, acidic saliva that hissed where it hit the concrete. I dove through the crumbled brick wall back into the mundane darkness of Sector C4. I didn't stop running until I hit the 42nd Street station. I vaulted the turnstiles, bypassed the sleeping attendant, and burst out onto the street. I collapsed on the sidewalk, gasping for air, clutching my side. I told the police Davis fell down a ventilation shaft. I told them the ground gave way. They searched for 3 days. They found his helmet. They found his flashlight. But they didn't find a body. They didn't find the breach in the wall either. When I went back down there with the recovery team, the cinder blocks were pristine. No hole, no crumbs. Just a solid, dusty wall that looked like it hadn't been touched since 1950. But I know what I saw. And here's the worst part, the part that keeps me awake, clutching a bottle of whiskey at 3 a.m. I took the subway home today. I don't have a car. I had to. I was sitting on the red line, rush hour, packed car. I was reading the paper, trying to ignore the anxiety. The train slowed between stations, a signal delay. The lights flickered. For a second, just 1 second, the person sitting across from me changed. He was a normal guy in a hoodie, but when the lights dimmed, I saw it. His face was smooth, no eyes, no mouth, and a thick, pulsing cord ran from his ankle into the floor of the train. The lights came back on. He was just a guy looking at his phone. But as the train started moving again, I heard it, not through the speakers, but in my head, a low, wet rumble. "One digested, millions to go." I quit my job this morning. I'm leaving the city. I don't know if the subway is a creature or if it's a parasite that's infested the infrastructure or if the whole damn city is just a feeding trough. But I know one thing. If you're on the subway and the train stops in the dark between stations and you smell almonds, don't wait for the doors to open. Force them and run. Update. I'm packing my car. I'm heading inland, but I just got a text. It's from Davis's number. It's a picture. It's dark, but with the brightness turned up, I can see texture. It looks like the inside of a stomach. And in the center, half submerged in the lining, is a watch. Davis's watch. The caption just says, "Transit is eternal." I'm destroying my phone. Goodbye.